Alrighty, hi everyone. This is Paul Zastroki. Thank you for attending tonight's webinar, Frame of Thought, Framing for Photo, Video, and Webinars. I've been working as a multimedia professional for about 6 years now, doing different things in different capacities. I started out in journalism as a journalism major, interning for papers, freelancing for papers. I worked as a multimedia specialist at Metro State University for a while there, a couple of years. Then I moved to Thailand. That's where this photo is from. I was shooting in the rice fields up north, where I worked for a travel company doing video for them. I also did some freelance from time to time over there, weddings, a little bit of conflict photography I was lucky enough to get into, because there happened to be the most recent coup, I guess, was about 2 years ago started, still kind of ongoing as far as military control and everything. And so some of these photos are right from the outset. This was a government complex that was being guarded basically from protesters here. This is one of the protesters passing motorbike rally. During the protests, burning of the Cambodian flag after a court ruling in favor of Cambodia on a small land dispute. And a guy tried to light himself on fire. They pulled him down quickly. He was safe and sound, and they put him out right away. So anyways, that's kind of my background, a bit of stuff, local newspapers, travel company, different stuff like that. Since coming back to Colorado, I still freelance from time to time. I don't shoot as much as I used to. But now my images look a little bit more like this. This was a recent shoot I did for an elementary school in Conifer, Colorado. It was a pizza literacy pajama day at an elementary school. And so it's kind of goes from the guy on fire to kids learning. And it's a good place to be. Let's see here. So basically what I've learned over the years, you learn basic composition principles, then you shoot as often as possible, and eventually you develop an eye. You develop your own style, and you learn how to recognize what makes a great image. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is just basically two basic principles of composition: the rule of thirds and clean borders. These are two of the most important, simple, basic rules of composition that you can talk about. If you're taking a photojournalism class or you're taking any kind of photography class, they're going to kind of go over these things. So what is the rule of thirds? The rule of thirds is a concept in which the frame is divided into 9 imaginary sections. This creates reference points which act as guides for framing the image. So researchers in the past researched, where the eye naturally goes to. How do people consume an image? Where does the eye naturally focus on first, and where does it go to from there? So 41% of users focused here first the longest, and that's up here in the north upper left-hand quadrant, and then it goes down, and then it skips across, and then it kind of goes back. And that's how you scan an image. And creating great images, you want to capture somebody's interest right away, and so this is kind of one of those tools that you use to make sure that you engage people. And the thinking behind this is basically that if you captivate them, if you draw them in naturally, the way that their eyes perceive things, that they'll connect more with an image. So another thing to note is it's really more of a guideline than a rule. Sometimes the best image that you can get, the best situation, you're gonna have to break the rules, but it's important to know the rules first, and so you know why you're breaking them. And this comes with practice, it comes with time. So different areas, generally you might want to go for the right quadrant or the left quadrant, or, one of those focal points. But sometimes it's good to break the rules. Another thing that's really important, this is probably even more important than the rule of thirds in my opinion, is to keep an eye on the border of your frame. When I was taking photography classes and everything else, talking to professionals in the field, photojournalists and everything else, that's one of the main things that they would always say is, oh, this image was ruined because something was sticking into the frame. It distracts the viewer. And so you can kind of see here, you naturally, this employs both the clean frame and the rule of thirds. You can see the mother's eyes and you kind of immediately connect with her. It kind of draws you in because of positioning and there's no distractions. And sometimes you want, you know, something in the background or you can't avoid it. It depends on what kind of photography you're doing, whether it's documentary style, fashion, whatever it is. And sometimes, you know, you can play around with the image afterward and post, but generally clean borders and the rule of thirds will get you off the ground. So I'm wondering if, let's use the chat feature here. Does anyone see anything wrong with this photo based upon the two concepts that we've been discussing? I know the legs can be distracting, but there's a small flaw in this one. Framing's good. Someone said the frame. A little tight on the left-hand side, but overall, it's kind of naturally divided into thirds the way that the rule of thirds goes. Okay, so I'm just gonna let you know there's a small, and this is minutia here, but this will drive photographers crazy. There's a small leaf in the edge of the frame on the left-hand side. And when you're working with photojournalism or documentary style, you can't edit. I mean, you can crop, you can do things. Looks like Aaron got it. Yeah, and so a little imperfection like that basically keeps a photo from being that next level of photo. Like it's a good photo, but it's not as good as it could be. And it's small things like that to notice. And most viewfinders on most DSLR cameras that you're going to get, unless you're spending a lot of money on them, will be around 97 to 98% of the view. So you'll have 98, 97% of the full frame in your viewfinder when you shoot with a DSLR most of the time. The more expensive models will have 100% viewfinders, and that's nice to have, but it's not necessarily worth the money. So let's kind of go back. The iPhone's okay. It's part of the image. It's part of the person. It's kind of unavoidable in that. But let's try another one here. This one is a little more. It has a little more to it. What can you tell me what is going on with this one? What you see that kind of ruins the photo based on the two principles that we've talked about? The half man, definitely. That white shirt pops out. It's an ugly part of the frame. There's one more thing that I'm looking for too, specifically. The red light is distracting. I would agree with that, but there's one more thing about composition in terms of how it's framed that I'm kind of looking for. Mark's touching on it right there. So we'll go on that. Too centered. It is too centered. You'll look and you'll see that the focus on the image, the girl is the most in focus. She's the most focused part. She's kind of the subject. The mother is too, but it happened that the mother is a little out of focus because I was working with a really wide aperture at night there. And so you'll kind of see that, and you'll notice the image is less impactful. It has the distracting guy over here, and it's just kind of an awkward angle. It's unbalanced. And so you kind of look at that, and the next thing you do, what would it look like if you crop it, if you change it? What can you do to make an image like that look better? And so I pulled it into Lightroom, and I wanted to pull a photo that kind of had its flaws, but it was an almost photo. You know, one of those photos, it's almost one you'd use, but it's not quite. And so that's what I kind of saw with this. And you can see the gradient, the rule of thirds gradient, that's naturally in editing applications like Lightroom, or you can use it in Photoshop, anything like that. And you kind of see I pulled it in there and I reframed it, and it becomes much more impactful. It's more centered. It has a sense of balance. It doesn't have the distracting half man in it. And you kind of focus naturally right on where it's at. And then this gets us more into the kind of framing that you're going to be using for webinars, for online stuff. More centered, more focused, simple, clean kind of stuff where you want you to pop, you want your information to pop, whatever it is. And so you're going to want that centered kind of balanced focus. And I thought about it for a while, and I thought, what's a good example for webinars, for shooting webinars, for framing? And I think that the news is probably one of the best examples that you could use for webinars. It's the same kind of thing. You want a clean, simple background. You want a sense of balance. You want, you can generally centered, but you can be to the left or to the right when you're presenting information. And it's the same thing. What do news people do? News people present information. They present images, they present graphics, they present information. It's the same thing that we're doing with webinars. And so I think that a lot of the same principles that apply to framing for news can be applied to framing for webinars. So like I said before, you have a sense of balance. One of the main problems I see with webinars often is the camera is a little too high or a little too low. You generally want it eye level. You want to feel kind of connected to the person. They employ great lighting, presenting information, graphics, multimedia, and they have the clean professional backdrop. I mean, he's got the coffee mug, he's got the notes, he's there for business. And I think that most of the time, especially in our field, talking to people in our class, we're all kind of after that same clean professional backdrop, whether it's, maybe a book stand in the background or some plants or something. Generally, you want to focus on using that kind of minutia to kind of create a professional atmosphere. And if it can be balanced, balance it out so that it has clean lines, stuff like that, and try and keep it at eye level so you're not looking down or looking up and at one of those crazy awkward angles. Another thing to employ, depending on what kind of a presentation you're giving, is the split screen. It's a common thing that you see in news and any kind of broadcast where they're presenting information. And so if you're using a whiteboard and you're going through the video section, use the split screen. Give yourself some space, but try and keep it balanced at the same time. Let's see here. I don't know if any of you seen the On24 webinar hosting web service video that recently came out? It's an ad that they did. If you haven't, here, let me send you a link real quick here. This is a link to the YouTube video. Watch it after the webinar is done. This is DJ Dave, and it's from On24. And it's multimedia solutions for webinars and everything else. And I was watching the video the other day. I was looking for images to kind of show a good webinar angle specifically for webinars. And even though this is done mostly with video cameras outside of it, the angles, the framing, it's good. I mean, he has a nice sense of balance in this photo. And if you watch the video, which is really nerdy and really fun, but if you watch the video, notice all of the people being displayed in the webinar illustrations, basically in the video where he's talking to people online or people are talking. You look at the lighting, the composition, the framing, all of it. All the examples that are shown in the commercial are really good. So you see DJ Dave here. He's got the good sense of balance, not too high or too low, about eye level, medium to medium type frame. You don't want to people don't want to strain their eyes to try and see if you're too far away from the camera. And so this is kind of an ideal thing. He's got the professional desk and everything else. It looks great. Let's see, I think that's pretty much it. I was hoping if any of you have any questions, I'd love to hear them right now, and we could get into that. We can just use the chat function here. All right, I'll wait a few more seconds here and then we can kind of move on. All right. Well, if you think of anything, just type it in right now. But here's to good framing. If you have any questions, comments about tonight's seminar, feel free to email me at pisastrokey@gmail.com. Reach out to me on Canvas through the email there. If you're interested in checking anything out, you can check out my Basecamp site, paulzastrokey.wordpress.com. It has a few examples. I need to update my website, but if you want to check out some more of my photo work, go to www.pmzphoto.com. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to come out tonight. And, I hope that this was helpful. So thank you all. I'm going to leave it there, and I hope you guys have a great night.